Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this thing here. This is the Turnigy Reaktor Quadkore charger, 4-port charger, and the biggest of the current lineup that Hobby King do. Now, as well as having the 4-port version that we have here, there's also a 2-port and a single-port version as well. So in this video what I'm going to do is show you how it comes in the box, then we'll have a look at how you actually use it, and I'll give you my impressions at the end. Now, the first thing you notice when you pick this up is how heavy it actually is. Now you can see it's absolutely covered in stickers, and there's a couple of reasons for that. It's a pretty standard charger and the controls are very standard if you've used something like an IMAX B6, a Bantam or something else, so I definitely would read the manual. The big warning seems to be about the fact that you shouldn't plug in a battery to the charger before you power it. You should power it first before you do anything else. So job one, I'm going to have to take all of these stickers off. Now, my first ever charger back in 2007 was an IMAX B6. That was very quickly replaced with another single charger Bantam unit that's still going strong today, but I'm a big fan of these chargers that allow you to charge more than one battery at once. It used to be with that single charger I could spend 4 to 5 hours the day before I went flying topping up and charging all of my batteries. With something like this, we should be able to charge all your batteries in much less time, and I'm a fan of that because less time charging is more time flying. Now you can see here as I'm taking the stickers off how it actually works. By the side of each of the controls there are the plugs for the cables to go into that's going to connect into the power connector of the battery, and then the balance connectors are actually built in at the side as well. If we check the specs, you can see that it does pretty much all the standard batteries that you'd expect, all the flavours of lithium batteries, as well as NiCad and nickel zinc, and also lead batteries too. Now, the only thing that surprised me as I'm unpacking this, apart from the weight of the thing, because it certainly has a lot of heat sinks on this guy, is the cables that have come with it. We have one big long power cable, and we have a couple of crocodile connectors if you're going to use something like a big 12-volt lead acid battery to charge this in the field, and it's come with a handful of other connectors to go onto your battery. Now, the challenge with those is that they haven't got the ends made up, so you're going to have to fire your soldering iron before you do everything else. Hobby King do sell a range of adapter cables with this, so if you look at the bottom of the listing for this charger, you'll find them down there with XT60, JST and all the usual kind of connectors on. Personally, I would have liked to see more cables like that in the box, because in my experience, once you have this set up, you tend to have it like a charging station in wherever you get it set up with your 12-volt power supply, and the ability to swap these leads out depending on whether you're using XT60 or the big XT90 style batteries, or the little batteries for the mini quads with the XT30s or Deans or JST or whatever it is really handy. So I personally would like to see some more of these cables with the ends made up, rather than have to buy these extra things when you're placing your order. So with that said, let's go and I'll show you what it's like in operation. So I'll just zoom in here into output 4 and we'll turn it on. When you turn it on, it does a self-check, and then the controls on this are very similar to things like the IMAX, the Bantam, an awful lot of the chargers that have these same 4 controls. So you can go into the settings, you can change the backlight, the safety timer, whether or not it makes a beep. You can also set the safety time and the maximum milliamp hour for the checks as well. The tip from me here is all these by default when it's supplied are rammed right up to the maximum settings. For safety's sake, I would always pull them back so that you're not having the charger sat there for too long. Personally, I'd rather have a charger finish a charge because it's reached the time limit or the milliamp hour limit, rather than continue to sit there and plug away at a problem battery and potentially cause a problem. So I would always reduce the time to about 60 to 80 minutes and always reduce the maximum milliamp hours to maybe 3,000–4,000. So just be aware of that when you're setting this up. It's worthwhile going through each of the ports and just pulling back all of those maximum settings to be something that will be more useful and safe when you're actually using the charger. Once you've got all that set, then charging is exactly as you'd expect. You just plug the battery into the balance port and it will automatically figure out the number of cells and the voltage that you're going to use as well. You select the charging current, then you press and hold the start button and away it goes, and as soon as it starts charging, the fan will start running. Now, one thing I will comment on, the fan is quite loud, and with all four going, you certainly know that it's charging, so you wouldn't want to make any conference calls or anything at your desk while this thing's whirring away beside you. But I don't mind that at all. I'd rather have too much cooling than not enough, and in operation it's staying at a reasonable temperature as well. Once it's charging, then you can use the decrease and increase buttons to see what's going on. It'll actually give you the voltage down to 1/1000th of a volt. I haven't got any voltmeters that are that sensitive. It looks at something like, and then that's how you leave it. And when it finishes, it'll beep, and it's pretty standard fare from there on in. I do like the solid construction. It has a lot of heat sinks, the fan seems to work very well, there's no sharp corners, everything seems pretty well put together. There are huge power ranges on this. You can charge some blooming big batteries and not have to worry about the current capacity on the outputs. The controls and buttons are very intuitive and easy to use. If you have used something like an IMAX or a Bantam or one of those other style of chargers that have these common kind of 4 buttons with a battery type on the left, start on the right, and increment and decrement in the middle, then it will feel very natural to you straight out of the gate. There's a very comprehensive set of options in the menu in here as well. Not only can you do all the standard stuff, there's extra little pieces as well. Two of the ones I really like. First of all, it's called regenerative discharge. As with all chargers like this, it will discharge battery packs at the end of the day, and you can either have what's called regenerative discharge turned on or off. If it's regenerative is turned off, it just uses the internal circuitry of the charger to discharge the battery and dissipate that heat. If you use regenerative discharge, it actually pushes that current from the discharging battery back into the power supply. And if you have a power supply, if that's something like a lead acid battery or something that will take that charge and actually top that battery back up, that's a really cute way of doing it in the field so that you can use that power to power other things as well. I do like the auto voltage and cell count. Almost all the other chargers that I've ever had that you set the cell count still go through the rigmarole of then checking that the battery that you've plugged in matches the setting that you've just done. The fact here that by plugging in the balance tap the charger can work it all out is great. There is the manual settings as well if you really want to do it that way, but that just makes all the setup that little bit faster. And with that massive output on each of the ports on this charger, if you had some parallel boards, you could probably charge more than 4 batteries at once if you really wanted to as well. So this is very much for those people who are looking for a charging station with a lot of grunt for bigger batteries or lots of smaller ones. A couple of things to be aware of though with this after working and playing with it for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Watch the warnings in the manual. I would recommend have a look at the manual, make sure that anything with a little triangle with the exclamation mark in, do have a read. The big one seems to be that you should not plug in your battery before you turn the thing on. Now I have to be very careful of that. That's a bad habit that I've got to with other chargers that don't care about it, but do make sure that you don't do that. That could cause you problems. Even though there is the piece in the menu itself talking about the temperature, there aren't any ports here for the temperature sensor, so you can't set them up. Now, a lot of people don't rate temperature sensors at all. I actually quite like them. I like the ability for the charger, if anything's going wrong or the battery is starting to get warm, to immediately stop the operation. Now I know a lot of people say that by the time it's getting that hot, you're probably already in a world of pain anyway, but I still like that added safety. Don't forget, you are going to have to buy the extra cables that you need, or you're going to have to fire up the soldering iron and put the XT60 connectors on the end of the wires that you get. I don't think you get enough wires in this. There should be at least another 4 or 5, and personally I would have liked to seen a couple come with XT60 connectors already on the end, just so that when you unpack it you can get to charging a lot faster once you've read the manual, of course. You will need a blooming big power supply for this. Each of those 4 outputs can do up to 300 watts. That's 1.2 kilowatts if you add all that up. So you are going to need a 12 volt bench supply or a 15 volt bench supply that has the grunt. So factor that into your pricing considerations when you're looking at getting one of these. It's not just the price of the charger. If you don't already have that kind of high wattage power supply, you're going to have to invest in one as well. Reaktor do a number. Personally, I'd probably go for the biggest and the baddest, just to make sure that if I did want to do parallel charging or charging very big packs, then I wouldn't run into any problems. I'd also get yourself some balance port extensions. These little balance pins on the side of any charger, I'm not a big fan of them being built in. I like it where the balance board is separate, because these pins over time, they carry current and they're constantly being connected and disconnected, and they're reasonably fine pins, so they tend to get pitted and scratched over time, and that ultimately affects the charger's ability to read the voltages accurately in the battery. So personally, I would get hold of a battery balance board and pop it into the side and plug the batteries in and out of that. That way the wear and tear is on all of those pins, and that's a relatively cheap replaceable part rather than wear the pins out on the actual charger itself. But in the charging that we've done here in the last 3 or 4 weeks with this, it has behaved flawlessly. Again, this is one of those chargers that's probably for those of you that want the high-end version that's capable of doing pretty much everything. If you don't need all of the ports, or you don't need all of that combined power, then don't forget there are 2 smaller versions of it, one with a 2-port and one with a single port with 300 watts as well. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release 1 or 2 extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.